latest, I was going to say charity shop finds, but these aren't charity shop finds. I have been to a flower festival, and I think one of these books came from there. And I've also been to an antiques centre on the way to the flower festival. And I've just come back actually from a real car boot fair too. So if you love flower arranging, you're in the right place. So settle down with a cup of tea, and why don't you let me know in the comments what your favourite thing is that you look for when you go to the car boot fair, an antique shop, or even the charity shops. So first of all, I have got this beautiful, quite small book from Jane Packer. This came from an antique shop. It's called Jane Packer Flowers. It costs £3. It's not for me. Look at those lovely gold trim to the pages there. Because at Flower Club, we all have a month when we're responsible for buying the raffle prizes, and there's a £10 budget. So I thought I would buy this little book when I saw it, and then when it's my turn next time to supply the raffle prizes, I've already got something in hand. But doesn't that look glorious? It would be perfect as a little coffee table book, even if you didn't like flowers, if you just loved colour and interiors, it would be gorgeous. Now, if you're interested in how much this costs, how much did it cost full price? £7.99 full price. So I'll see if I can find a link to this and put it in the notes under the video when I've stopped filming. But this, I think, would make a perfect present for somebody you knew that liked flowers. It's a nice little gift. Quite small, and you could post it too, and hopefully it wouldn't cost too much of a fortune. A glorious book. So what else did I buy from the same antique centre? I actually bought this book here. Now this was £6. So when I'm used to shopping at the charity shop, I really want to get my books for 50p in a pound, but sometimes when something catches your eye, you just have to fork out the money, and £6 was very affordable. So it's called Choosing China and Glass by Caroline Clifton Mogg. And I've started reading it. I love a book when it's got the fly leaves that you can use as a bookmark. So let's just remember what page I am on. I'm going to have to remember the jug, I think. So how much is this one full price? Can I see a price? No, I can't. Now, I did just wonder as I started reading this whether this has been made for the American market. So it's not so much this book giving you advice about how to choose china and glass. It's like a little bit of a history of the two, and it reminded me a little bit of the book I've previously shared in the members group that was by the Royal Copenhagen Ceramics shop. I'm just trying to make a little bit of space here so I can open the book and show you more. Oh, £18.99 was the original price. Again, a fabulous coffee table book. I am trying to wean myself off buying magazines. And in fact, the two friends I've just been car booting with, I've given away some of my magazines. I tried selling them a few weeks ago when I did the card book myself. And if you're a member of my Facebook group, Flower Start World, I would have shared some pictures and a video of my stall then. But I just was really fascinated by this, and I'm trying to think, if I'm spending £6 on a book, it's there forever, whereas I'm probably spending sometimes £5.99 on a magazine, which once you flick through the pages and read a couple of articles and perhaps ripped out a couple of articles, I don't want to be hanging on to the magazines forever. So Blue and White is speaking to me at the moment. Let's see if we can work the right way through the book. So it gives a little bit of history about china shapes, colours and patterns, and then glass, the art of setting the table, using china and glass around the house, display, storage and care for china and the glass. Again, a beautiful coffee table book. You could imagine just picking this up, having a little bit of a read. It's a bit like a magazine. You see the picture and you think, oh, I wonder what that says about it. So it does talk a lot about American designers. But I'm always up for learning a little bit about people who come from a different part of the world to me. So Lisa, who I normally go out with, Lisa and Jan. I don't think Jan was with us when we went here. And she wasn't with us this morning either. So Lisa has asked for first dibs at looking through this book. Hence, I wanted to get a really good look at it myself. So I shall lend it to her with a note saying, please return, as soon as she's flicked through. So just absolutely glorious. So it does give a little bit of the history of some of the pieces. And I'm thinking that it's inspired me to go back to the ceramics gallery at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Have you seen the video that I posted about that? And again, there will be pictures in the free Facebook group, Flowers Start World. Now, look here, it's got someone's name, John Hall, written on it. So what does it say about that? Many of them were printed for individual people or institutions. This one says mess, number 17. They're just really, really lovely. This puts me in mind of my, is it a Johnson Brothers Denmark piece? I've got a teacup and saucer and I think a couple of plates. So it says above, Stephanie Stokes uses blue and white in a clean modern way. The plates are a Swedish neoclassical design. So there we are. I will say that of all these things, I'm not particularly drawn to a willow pattern and the Asian look to it. I much prefer something that speaks to the florals. So Wedgwood here, you'll recognise that as the jasper ware. So quite interesting seeing that used as a coffee cup and saucer. I imagine it must be glazed inside. And these are the glazing on the outside. It's sort of like a rough. It's not like a polished glazed finish. And I think so I've got a little what I use for a cake stand, but I always do put a little square of a doily or greaseproof paper underneath because I don't think it's really made for eating off. So it sort of looks at the traditional and then comes in with a piece that's a bit more modern too. And I'm starting as well, as soon as I find someone's name that interests me, I then look them up on Instagram. I don't know about you, I quite like flicking through my Instagram, a bit like I used to flick through Pinterest, but I don't subscribe to Pinterest anymore. I lost too many hours to that. But it's quite nice just having this roving magazine in your pocket when you've got a moment and you're sitting there waiting for a train or something like that, that you're being inspired by all this lovely glassware. And from memory, I think this is saying, because I think the candlesticks might be quite old, but the bottle's quite new. And I think it was saying as well that decanters are quite reasonably priced these days because I guess they're a bit out of fashion, so you could use them in different ways. I just love a bit of red and green with an amaryllis and then a hurricane jar. I wonder if that comes in two pieces actually, whether that's a candlestick and then this has been inserted as a hurricane jar to stop the breeze blowing the candle out as the candle inside. I would absolutely love to be able to find one of these. I'm going to have to write it down on my charity shop wish list on my phone. So coloured glass. As I say, it was just really interesting to read. Using china and glass together. It's all about mixing and matching and being confident what you've got. Don't think you've got to get a matching set of everything. I can see here the dinner plate is a different pattern to the little berry bowl in the centre there. So, but it's got this cohesive look because it's got a blue and white tablecloth, blue and white napkins, blue glasses, clear glasses. So it's just got a predominant colour theme. So I think it's all about sticking with the colour themes. But as I say, this book is absolutely glorious. And I have read, up to where my bookmark is, I have read every single page. These here, pineapple vases. I know it's a pineapple vase because there's a pineapple in it, but I read about pineapple vases a few pages backward, earlier on in the book. And I'd never known what it is or seen what it was. But it's got quite a, conical shape. And then the top area is where you balance your pineapple. And I think pineapple is a symbol of welcome and sort of hosting at your home. As seen on, carvings in stately homes. And of course, the pineapple was a sign of wealth as well. If you were growing them here in the UK, it was probably because you had a glass house with a heated furnace that kept everything going. And of course, a gardener, an under-gardener to tend it all. A little linen napkin there with just a few sprigs of lavender, really lovely touches. This sort of Wedgwood blue paintwork here, and here there's some really modern pieces of glass on the side here. Or is it a carafe? It says Modern crafts from the Conran shop. An Art Deco teapot. Can you see that there? It looks similar to the Pyrex teapot that I bought from the charity shop a while ago. So it's really exploring the photographs, having a good old look. No more black jasperware here. And it doesn't have to be, fusty and dusty just because it's vintage, although some of the pieces are, very heavily gilded, which sort of gives you perhaps an indication that it might be more historic in nature. And this is the picture from the front cover, same table in there. And, even the seat covers, the tablecloth, it's all being very carefully thought through. Greens, the Portuguese green plates. There's something also, I can't remember now, this sort of yellow pottery ware, sort of that peasant look from France. The lady does call it something else, so I can't quite remember what that is at the moment. So, a glorious book. And if you're interested in borrowing this from the library or buying your own copy, I need to remember that was my bookmark. I will leave a link to it and you can decide whether you want to flick through the pages too, like the pineapple glass again. What do you do with these little footed bowls, these raised bowls? They're bonbon dishes, so this looks like homemade Turkish delight in it. Is that more Turkish delight? Looks like sugar cubes. And then using an old glass for teaspoons. That's how I've got lovely cake forks. Well, they're cake forks that they're old. And some are in a box and some are loose. So I do have mine stored in a cupboard like that. Glassware storage. Oh, yes. I love the blue and white here, but I'm, as I said before, my personal taste isn't this sort of more of an Asian look to it. Lovely white crockery with the reticulated edge where the holes have been stamped through. And this is just reminding me of something. I have taken a screenshot of a video I've been watching. I'm quite into Homeworthy at the moment, and I'm redecorating my living room, which I use as, well, it's our front room. It's like a cross between a living room and a home office. And I've decided that I want one of these little, what are they called? A little display shelf. I'm wondering whether this folds down, whether you can lift the lid of the semicircular piece off there and then fold down that third leg flat and then have the top come down. I'm not quite sure whether that is the case. It just looks to me as if that's hinged. But I've redecorated the front room and I've painted it white, and I want to introduce colour in my furnishings and accessories. And I do have some dripware vases which belong to my granny, which are difficult colours. They're not exactly a matched pair, they're more like sisters than twins. And the drippage is yellow and orange and sort of purple at the bottom. And I thought perhaps I could showcase these and actually bring them out from the cupboard under the stairs if I had one of these little display areas. And of course, if I got tired with anything, I could just take off the files and put something there instead. So we'll have to see how I get on with that. But this is an absolutely glorious book. And here they just stacked these cake plates. I don't know whether they are cake plates because they've got this sort of curved lip here. And if you were serving your cake, you'd want to get your cake server under the lip. So I think they must be bonbon bowls as well. And there is a display of glassware. Quite often you see in vintage markets a sort of metal stands with spikes out, and I think that's for drying wine bottles or jam jars or drinking glasses, I'm not quite sure. But here they've taken the chandelier and added all the drinking glasses to it. So as I say, this is a truly glorious book. So once I've finished reading, and I'll probably find out lots of more information I could have shared with you, I'll be passing it on to my friend Lisa so she can enjoy it. But please do remember, Lisa, if you're watching this video, it's my book and I do want it back. So 2 books, £3 and £6. Actually, I think I did go to the charity shop. I was in Manchester recently, and Manchester City Centre, looking around the charity shops, the good old thing, get onto Google Maps and say charity shops near me. Manchester has 2 universities, if not 3, I think. And we did find that mainly the charity shops were full of clothes and curated as vintage clothes as well. So I bought this from quite a large Oxfam shop, And it was, again, one of those buys where I couldn't, I normally like to buy a book that's like £1, £2. And this one was a whopping £3.99. But I went ahead and bought it. And actually, I will just say, I used it to store something, and I've been looking all over the place for this postcard. We went to the Manchester Art Gallery, and I've got a collection of postcards. I've got two here. I've got a collection of postcards that vaguely remind me of my mum and dad and my daughter. I need to find one of my husband now, but I found a portrait of me, and it's not really me. And I thought, do you think that looks like me? It just made me laugh. The price of a postcard, I can add her to my family display. And also Manchester and Lowry, I can remember, I think my mum gave my dad on their first wedding anniversary a print of a Lowry painting. And if you're around from the 70s and 80s, you'll know the song about matchstalk men and matchstalk cats and dogs. So I bought that to remind myself of my mum and dad. And again, this is a book that is more like a magazine, and if you're interested, again, I'll try and see if I can find it and leave a link to it in the description underneath the video. Country Living magazine. So I think Country Living magazines, I think I've got several Country Living magazine books, but I do think they are all quite old. This one's 1899 as well, originally. I wonder whether Country Living have decided not to produce the books anymore, and what they seem to be doing is they always produce a Christmas magazine, not just the December issue, but specifically a Christmas magazine, which goes on sale mid-December, around the time of my sister's birthday, so I need to remember to look out for it. And then they seem to have started doing seasonal ones as well, in spring and autumn as well. And I think a lot of magazines are doing this now, so you pay a lot more money. I think probably £9 or £12.99, but it's like a bumper magazine, which is almost like a book. So it's quite nice to have. So I'll flick through here again. You can see it's just, and perhaps if you're a long time subscriber, I wonder whether the pictures here will be familiar to you. Let's go the right way around. Get it to flick more carefully. But again, a lovely coffee table book, and it's a matter of, you've got a few minutes to spare. You don't want to put the telly on. You just want to perhaps get inspired. Now, this chair, do you remember when I did the thrift haul and I showed you the balloon back chair, I think I called it, with the cane seat that I got from our Faversham Safari, the yard sale that takes place, I think it's the first Sunday of August for the last 11 years. So definitely make a note in your diary for next year. So again, you can read, you can flick, you can have a look. I'm particularly interested in colour combinations. And I might have said this before, but of course, all those time, that 20 years I spent teaching flower arranging classes and talking about colour, I never really related it to my own home. And I was saying to friends, I sort of bought things that I liked, that were within my budget, but they weren't bought to be part of a wider whole. And I'm trying to be more mindful of that. I don't just buy a cushion cover because I like that design. I'm thinking, is it within the right colour palette? Just for a more cohesive look. I don't want matchy, but I want it to look as if it was a planned whole. So there we go. A lovely, lovely book. Although I slightly regretted buying it only because it weighed down my bag and we were travelling by train. So it's my shoulders were in need of a rest by the end of the day. They're glorious. These look like French enamelware here. A really lovely book to look through. So that's that. And then at one of the flower clubs I go to, we have a pre-love stall. And I picked up this book last week. And I paid £3 for this. I would have liked to have got it slightly less because I'm used to charity shop prices. Oh, and have I the bookmark there? Have I put that bookmark there? I don't think I have. I don't think I've had a chance to look through this yet. But I'm quite interested. Flower arranging books, they date and age. So perhaps some of the Paula Pright books I've got at the moment and some of the earlier, the Jane Packer ones, it's the clashing colours, it's all very hothouse style flowers, nothing locally grown as we are embracing these days, of course, using flower foam. So they sort of get this niche where you're looking at a flower book, and it's interesting because it's vintage, and actually we're going back to all the old ways of pin holders and chicken wire. But I am interested in the history of flower arranging, and I just thought, I did and ah about this. I think, well, I'm not teaching flower classes anymore. I don't need to be soaking up all this information to pass on to my learners. But I thought, it's still an interest and a hobby of mine. And I do want to, it's about continuing to learn. And the more you learn, the more you find the connection with, my world of flowers and the connection to stately homes and gardens. And it sort of brings all these little strands of knowledge. So we've got the ancient world, the Far East floral art, the Islamic influence, the Renaissance and the modern world. Britain is tradition and empire, and Britain in the 20th century. I know, let's look at the 20th century. When was this book published? Because I reckon the arrangements will look quite dated to our eye. So let me find that important front page. 1988. So what's that? 38 years ago, am I right? You can do the calculations there. Tell me whether I've got my mental arithmetic wrong. So let's go to page 181 and see what was modern in 1988. I've forgotten the number of the page. That doesn't, the 20th century. Starting with the 30s, of course that was. So let's go to 203, modern dimensions, 203, where are we? So do these, I'm not sure that that's got the right page number on it. Innovations and inspirations in the post-war period, Julia Clements. Do you remember that I was doing a Julie and Julia, the flower edit, and trying to recreate all the arrangements in Julia Clements' book called, I can't remember what it was called now. Got so used to saying the words and now I can't remember. So again, you'll find pictures of those on my Instagram and in the Facebook group. So whether these look familiar to me. And if you remember that series I did, can you remember the title of the book? I know exactly where the book is. I've looked at it so much that the paper cover has become all worn. So let's find the modern stuff. Where is the modern stuff? Because it's going to look really old-fashioned, I reckon. Here we are. 220. Modern trends and new dimensions. A sparse arrangement with the emphasis on line and space and each unit clearly defined. So lots of driftwood and, a tropical leaf, amaryllis flower head, single arum lily. So it's quite sculptural in look. And I would say if you're ever doing a flower arranging competition, when they use the words modern or contemporary, it's kind of this kind of flower arrangement they're looking for, or that people do. So these are these dried banana leaves? I can't quite remember, but look, here's a black and white pictorial, a few bulrushes, a few straight leaves. They look like sunflower heads, a big leaf with monstera leaf there, and a couple of bent reeds. Abstraction designs there. Contemporary influences, European trends. So we always look to Europe as having that fresh modern style. When we were doing the classic English flower arranging, British flower arrangement, it's all about triangles and shapes, but it was the European way. It was very much more pared back and more contemporary, as we would say. This continental design, a sort of hedge arrangement, a parallel design. Everything's been placed in the arrangement in parallel fashion. There's no crossing or radiating stems. So that was quite the thing to do in the early days of my flower arranging. So I am really going to be enjoying reading this book, just to complete my flower arranging education. Are we ever going to complete our education? I think not. So again, I'm enjoying looking at that. It'll give me a change from the normal thrillers and crime novels that I read to have something a bit more educational. So that was £3 from Nearly You. And then today, do you want to see what I bought today? I bought this, which is one of those Dutch houses. I don't know what this means here. Delft, Heinen. I was just wondering whether some of them are had a liquor in it. The Bowls, BOLS. Is that who make Advocar? I think this is just a little house though. And nice that it's got the printing on all sides. But what attracted me to it was, number one, it was only 50p, and number two, it says Bloemen and Planten. So that is the front of a florist shop. So again, I've got my shelf up in my front room when I'm trying to curate things that are blue, white and red. And I've got a tiny little house that my mum gave me years and years and years ago. So this can be the big sister to that. Now, because it's September and coming into autumn time, I've got myself some homemade by the lady who had a stall at the car boot, marmalade. The marmalade season for making it, if you're buying fresh Seville oranges, is normally January. And then damsons. So damsons are probably in season July time, I would say. Blackberries, I normally pick my blackberries on bank holiday weekend. And Lisa, when she was out today, she bought some Kilner jars because she wanted to make some sloe gin. And lo and behold, where we are, she found a blackthorn bush, which is where the sloes come from. So she was busy picking her blackberries to put straight into her Kilner jar to make her sloe gin. And then there was a box of glassware as well. I do not need another piece of glass, but there was a tempting price on the box that said £1. So I thought I would do one in, one out. This pressed glass jug. The seam is quite obvious. It's so obvious. I wondered whether it was a crack, but it isn't. It's that side. So the handle was in one part and the spout was in the other. I like to keep my makeup in a glass jar, and I think this one looks slightly nicer than the one I've got in the bathroom at the moment. So I will be cleaning it and then donating my glass jug to the charity shop. Now I've got one last thing to show you, and this was free. So you may well find that if you've got lots of members of a flower club, that as your members start to age, retire, start to downsize, they will quite often bring in things that they don't want anymore. And this was one of the items that I found in a box. So a little bit of, I wanted a memory as well as the long-standing flower ranger. So hello Denise, if you're watching, I shall remember you every time I use this container. I picked it out because it was quite small and I'm trying to declutter a little bit, but I thought that looked like quite a fun little container, and it says at the bottom, made in Japan. It's silvery, but I've no doubt that that isn't silver at all. But what I thought I might do was to do a little flower arrangement. And I'm noticing, when you're watching things on Instagram, and you've got the coffee table books, that I'm seeing arrangements in proper sized containers, but they just seem to be overly tall. That thing about balance when we do an arrangement, about actual balance and visual balance. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I use this little container, but try to do an arrangement, try to break the rules. And I think it's sometimes quite nice. Sometimes you can become too stricken with flower arranging rules and it stops your creativity. So I have picked some flowers from my garden. Here they are. And I want to do an arrangement that looks too tall. And as long as it doesn't actually fall over, that will be a success. Now, what I have got is a tiny, tiny flower frog. Now, have you watched the video I posted a while back on my collection of flower frogs and also of my glass flower arranging blocks? It's really good to sneeze. So I've got this tiny, tiny little flower frog pin holder, and this was given to me by a lady called Anne, who sadly passed away now, but she was the chair of our flower club for many, many years. So I'm remembering her at the same time as keeping in touch with Denise. And what I'm going to do is fix it in place with museum wax. I find this so helpful. It's reusable, and there is already a link to this in the description underneath the video. It comes with a little metal a little metal, a little wooden scoop. You could use a teaspoon, and you sort of, it is slightly sticky. Take it off like that, mould it round, and then sticky, sticky, sticky. I would normally be washing my hands here. Put a little blob on the bottom, and then twist it down. It's quite difficult here, I can't really get my fingers in, so it's quite hard to, you need to push firmly. Obviously I'm pushing my thumb onto the spikes of the frog, so I don't want to be cutting through my thumb, but it needs to be firm. And normally I'd leave this to dry, you know, for overnight. They recommend on the box, on the pack. But there it is there. It's going to be secure enough. Imagine me pouring water in, and then we will do the arrangement. So the different thing when you're arranging flowers in a pin holder is that you cut them square off and not slanted as you would normally do if you're doing it in water, because they need to have somewhere firm for the flowers to sit. So I'm standing up there measuring. I know that the base of the vase is here. I want to cut off a little bit, and the modern look is just, it really is a collection of flowers, as if you've just, you know, I have just picked these from the garden, so I don't need to think about, you know, creating a symmetrical triangle, following the rules. I'm just going to showcase a few of the stems that I've grown in my garden. And the fiddly thing about arrangement really small is that it's fiddly. So I've got some feverfew, which is good for migraines. I'm going to pinch off some of those leaves, just give the stems a fresh cut. I might just have that coming up that side. I might have that slightly lower. To me, it was on the same plane as the dahlia, so I want it sort of recessed beneath the dahlia, so that the dahlia is the star of the show. It's moving around there because it was balanced but not firm. And of course, you're not going to turn your flower arrangement upside down. So you just need things to stand where you want them to stand, because once you've finished arranging, you've stopped fiddling by then. Now I've got 2 penstemons, which I did choose the ones that are closed. I did have some regard to my natural, you know, order of things. This is the smaller buds here, and I'm going to put that towards the back. And look how it stays. And then, oh, I thought that was taller. It was, when I said taller, I didn't mean taller. I meant it was the more, actually I might keep that long. I thought this looked like the, not the flimsiest, the one with the smaller buds. We want to have a focal flower heaviness at the front of the arrangement, and normally you would get everything to become finer and smaller towards the outer edges. But I'm trying to break the rules. I'm just trying to practice my skills, arranging in the flower frog, in a pin holder, challenging myself by doing something really small, and then challenging myself again by doing something that, although it may well be balanced, because it's not going to fall over, will look pleasing. And I'm just trying to separate out those 2 flowers. They're both rounded forms and about the same size. So, oops. I quite like the fact that's got a bit of a wiggle on it, and ideally I'm going to exaggerate my look. I'm going to get it to come off to one side of it. And then I've got this, I just chose the sedum here. It's just got a tiny blush of pink starting to develop. Again, I'm naturally thinking I should be low down because it's quite a visually heavy material, but I can see I've got a gap just there. Could I just put it in there like that? Well, we'll never know until we actually look at this arrangement side on. It's not helping either of us, you watching it from above and me watching it both through my camera lens and also to the side. Shall I see if I can just gently, you know, lie it down like that? You can see what I'm doing. Anyway, I'll take a picture of that and I will post it in the Facebook group, and see you again next time.